I smiled as realization dawned. The method I used the most was the silent treatment. It is fantastic. It requires minimal effort. Always a good thing, and can be used immediately. What I like most about it is the fact that the recipient will have no idea whatsoever why I am doing it. This really messes with their mind. They cannot understand why I will not communicate with them, as they cannot work out what they have done to receive this treatment. If they had any understanding of me, they would just walk away and let me get on with it. That would annoy me, as they would no longer be giving me any attention. So I would halt the silent treatment, as it was no longer working. Instead, they have to know and understand why I have gone silent. It burrows into their minds and twists away as they ask question after question. H.G. Tudor, Confessions of a Narcissist.
H.G. Tudor is a diagnosed narcissistic psychopath on YouTube. He has written books and he gives advice to people who are in or who have been in an abusive relationships with a narcissist. Now I am not saying there is anything wrong with taking advice from somebody who is disordered. Nor am I blaming H.G. for having personality disorders. That is not his fault. His inability to feel emotional empathy and guilt is not his fault. However, what I do blame him for is the fact that even though he is self-aware, he still chooses to abuse people. Also, what I find disgusting is the amount of praise he gets for being an abuser. He talks about how cruel he is to other people and gets praised by his fans for it. Very few of his fans seem to have any empathy for other victims of abuse. However, a lot of his fans seem to call themselves empaths. I would say, if you are empaths, how come when HG talks about bad things he does to others, your instincts do not seem to be to sympathize with the victim, but instead to praise the abuser? I cannot help but wonder if some of these people get into abusive relationships because their instincts of other people are completely wrong. Abuse victims, how would you like it if your abuser bragged about what they did to you on YouTube and were being praised for it?
Dear Caroline, I write this letter purely from a position of kind intent. You are involved with someone who you must go from as soon as you have read this letter. H.G. Tudor is a name that evokes a sense of malevolence and darkness, a figure lurking in the shadows, manipulating, exploiting, and wreaking havoc upon the lives of others. To understand the true sinister nature of H.G. is to peel back the layers of deception, to shine a light on the twisted mind that revels in causing pain and suffering. It is within the very essence of H.G.'s being that the seeds of malevolence were sown. Devoid of empathy, emotionally empty, he finds pleasure and fulfillment in the misery of others. A puppet master, pulling invisible strings, manipulating his victims to dance to his twisted tune. For him, empathy is a foreign concept, an alien notion that he observes in others but feels no connection to within himself. Like a predator stalking its prey, H.G. wears a mask of charm and charisma to lure his victims towards him. With calculated precision, he identifies their weaknesses and insecurities, exploiting them to gain power and control. His manipulative tactics are honed to perfection, leaving his victims trapped in a web of his making, unable to escape the clutches of his sinister game. But it is not the only act of manipulation that defines the sinister nature of H.G. It is the absolute delight he takes in causing pain and suffering, the sadistic pleasure that courses through him as he witnesses the devastation he has wrought. He feeds off the emotional turmoil of others, extracting satisfaction and power from their vulnerability and despair. There is a distinct lack of morality in the actions of H.G. He has no regard for the well-being of others, viewing them as mere pawns to be used and discarded at his whim. Their pain, their tears, their shattered lives mean nothing to him. He revels in the destruction he leaves in his wake, finding a perverse sense of satisfaction in the misery he inflicts. But what truly sets H.G. Tudor apart is his ability to demonstrate he cannot be touched. He plays the part with such conviction, such mastery, that even his victims question their own reality. He gaslights, manipulates, and twists the truth, leaving his victims doubting their own perceptions, their own sanity. It is a sickening display of psychological warfare, designed to keep them under his control, forever trapped in his sinister grasp. There is no remorse within H.G., no regret for the pain he has caused. He is a creature driven by his own insatiable hunger for power and control, a relentless quest that knows no bounds. He is the embodiment of darkness, a force that thrives on the suffering of others. But perhaps the most unsettling aspect of H.G.'s sinister nature is the fact that he is not some fictional character, a figment of someone's imagination. He is a real person, walking among us, hidden behind a cleverly crafted facade. His actions, his manipulation, and sadistic pleasure are the truest reflections of the darkest depths of human nature. H.G. Tudor is a chilling manifestation of a twisted mind, devoid of empathy and consumed by a thirst for power and control. His ability to manipulate, exploit, and cause pain showcases a malevolence that is deeply unsettling. To encounter the likes of H.G. Tudor is to face a sinister force that preys upon the vulnerabilities of others for its own pleasure and gratification. You may not have yet experienced this, for that I am grateful. If he has begun that deadly dance with you, you have my compassion. But whether if you find yourself in relation to him, leave him at this instant. Leave him, flee, and never look back. He cannot be controlled, he cannot be conquered, he cannot be changed. Whatever he tells you, do not believe it, but know this. You are in such danger, and the only way to avoid it is to flee. I know this. I wish somebody had written such words to me, so that I would have paid heed and avoided the utter torture and misery that vicious man visited on me time and time again. You need not suffer. I implore you, leave, and do not look back. Yours in concern, Fiona. I stopped.
I just stopped by to thank you for this glowing reference, and to remind you that I will be living up to everything you wrote about me, just for you, I declared in a low voice, before I smiled, folded the letter up, tucked it back into my pocket, and then walked away.
You get channels like narc.com that are support channels that give advice for people who have been victims of narcissist abuse, and they welcome him on like he is a hero.
Today, it's a very special day. We have an extraordinary person who's helped our community extensively and greatly, and I would like to introduce you, H.G. Tudor, to our platform. HG, you're extremely welcome today, and we're very honoured to have you here. And I would also like to extend great thank you for the work you do for our community.
What reaction do you think people would have if it was a support group for people who had been molested as children and they invited a diagnosed pedophile on and the guy claimed he was the best to help you understand his kind because he regularly ensnarled and abused minors? I do not understand why victims of abuse want to talk to a proud abuser, one that treats his partners like this.
I've seen it repeatedly with my victims that, if I decide, I want to pull them from the bed and put them down on their knees while they give me a blow job and I push their head down, etc., I will do so. And invariably, they might try and fight against it, but they go along with it. Now, in some instances, that's done in the golden period and they get off on the thrill of being dominated that way. I'm a tall man, that, I'm sufficiently the musculature of me where they feel themselves being picked up and thrown around a bit. It's a thrill to be controlled that way. And then, of course, it takes a dark turn in the course of devaluation that I'm rough with them in a way which doesn't give them necessarily any benefit whatsoever. And it can go beyond that, which they're comfortable with. But of course, I have no empathy for them, so I don't care, and they're being punished for their transgressions. Now,
I found this quite disgusting that he said this, and his comment section was filled with praise. This guy admits sex assaulting partners. He admits to the most vile, degrading kind of abuse, and they praise him. If your first instinct when hearing HG say his does this to people is not to feel empathy for the victim, but to jump in the comment section and praise the abuser, I would say stop claiming to be empaths. I wonder if some of you keep falling for toxic people because you are attracted to toxic people. Some of HG's fans make me think of the kind of people who write love letters to killers in prison. Some people seem like they think of HG as the good narcissist. They seem to think narcissists are all monsters, but HG is the good one because he helps people.
Are you the narcissist with the heart of gold? Are you the serial killer Dexter who takes out the bad people?
Most narcissists are unaware of what they are and do not go about with a specific plan to hurt people, while HG does. He is self-aware and chooses to hurt people.
And then there are aware narcissists such as myself, where I know full well what I'm doing, but I essentially, because of my sadism, find it entertaining to puppet people. It amuses me, stops me from becoming bored, because I become bored very quickly. But in essence, narcissism is a self-defense mechanism.
Going to have a disengagement period as well. Is there going to be a devaluation period? Or can you temper or change the way you are in a relationship because you have that level of awareness?
There will always be a devaluation. Disengagement may occur if one of the triggers occurs. But the peculiarity of it is that when a new relationship starts, we're imbued with the expectation that this time it's going to work, that this person is different from all the rest. And of course, when it goes wrong, it's because of their failings, not because of mine. So then, because I tire of them, they enter devaluation. So people often ask, well, given that you know what you are, surely you can stop yourself. Well, no, I don't want to stop myself. I enjoy doing what I do. It's my peculiarity of that form of enjoyment. So when I first meet this person, I don't set out thinking, I'm going to make this person's life hell at the outset. I think this is an interesting, desirable person. Let's see where it goes to. But invariably, they'll do something that lets me down, and thus the devaluation occurs. That's the nature of the dynamic. And I might temper, for example, the forms of manipulation that are utilized. But of course, the manipulations still remain. The games have to be played. That's the nature of the dynamic that I have with people, whether it's romantic or otherwise.
Since you advise people and must have experienced what pain other people suffer from the involvement with the narcissist, do you ever refrain from devaluing your intimate partner, primary source, or friend because you know what pain it causes? Short answer, no. I never refrain from the implementation of devaluation just because it's going to cause somebody else some pain. If they had done what they should have done and not threatened my control, they wouldn't have to suffer, would they? Therefore, they brought it on themselves and have only themselves to blame. I never, ever refrain from devaluation just because it's going to cause somebody some pain. On the contrary, the fact that it's going to cause them some pain makes it all the more delicious.
The abuse is premeditated. That is what I think makes him evil, in my opinion. If you had two pedophiles and one says,
Yes, I have this attraction to children. I did not ask for it. I do not want to act on it. I stay away from children. I go to counseling. I am determined not to hurt children.
And the other one says this.
Yes, I like rapping children. Why should I stop? It is not a problem for me. Only for them. I like what I do. Why should I change?
Which one do you think is best or worst out of those two? You probably would not trust either around children, but one clearly has a worse mindset than the other. Some aware narcissists do not want to hurt people. Some go to therapy. While I know that there is no cure for narcissistic personality disorder, it is not true that all narcissists are evil people that are out to deliberately hurt people.
You know, this whole thing reminds me sort of like the magicians who tell the public how you saw the woman in half, you know, like I'm sure there's other narcissistic sociopaths out there who are like, hey, HG, what are you doing?
NPD is highly demonized online when it is a disorder that they did not ask for, and very often is a result of childhood abuse. HG has talked about his difficult childhood. It is not his fault he is disordered, but the fact he chooses to abuse is his fault. I think people make the choice of whether to be evil or not. And if you still think his bad childhood or personality disorders excuses his behavior, then I would ask, would you also excuse child abusers? Murders? Where do you draw the line? I put the premeditated way HG chooses to abuse his partners more down to the fact he is a psychopath than a narcissist. He may not go into a relationship thinking, I am going to make this person's life hell, but it seems he does go into some relationships with the mindset of viewing potential partners as victims or prey, referring to himself as a predator and referring to dating as insolent.
Empaths exist. I should know. I ensnare them regularly, draw on them for the provision of the prime aims.
Sinister, scary part of the book is when he writes a love letter to a victim. And he described how he sized up this victim in the bar and how he found out more about her before he actually approached her. And it's very chilling. I mean, it would make a great horror movie. And I'm just going to give you a few little short quotes just from that little bit of the book, because it's so incredibly enthralling and scary and compelling. So he addresses the letter to Dear Victim, and he says, I have met you by chance in a wine bar a week ago. Is it only a week? It feels like I've known you for another lifetime. I picked you out. I look out for ladies like you.
Dear victim, there you sit, soaked in innocence, drenched in unawareness, drowning in vulnerability. You are an empath. I can detect that from the things that you say, the things that you do, the way you move, the way you interact with others, the manner of your gestures, the look in your eyes, and the facial expressions that you make. You radiate as only the empath does. Great bubbles of honesty form on the surface of you and float upwards. Arcing jets of the need for justice spray from you, and decency shimmers about you like some ethereal cloak. I watch as the ripples of your caring nature sweep back and forth across you, beautiful display of what you are. The coils of your compassion emerge onto you and spiral upwards, enveloping the fortunate recipient that you direct them towards. Your desire to heal and fix shines from you as if a magnificent light, sweeping around the world from you, the lighthouse, banishing darkness and providing succor and support to those this ray of repair lands on. I see it all. These empathic traits and more besides are part of the empathic ecosystem, and I am the predator that waits within this ecosystem, ready to take advantage of it.
HG has a hierarchy of narcissists. He categorizes them as lower, middle range, greater, and the ultra. He calls himself the ultra, meaning the most evolved type of narcissist, and states there is only one ultra. He is claiming that out of everybody who has NPD, he is the best and most evolved narcissist there is.
Can you tell us some well-known people who are ultras? I can only tell you one. Me. And I'm not that well-known in terms of who I am. I'm not particularly famous. I'm well-known within certain circles, but I'm not internationally famous. There's only one ultra, and that's me.
HG is a narcissist. Of course he will think he is the best. He is grandiose. I would ask what makes him better than the likes of Harry's wife and other people HG claims are narcissists.
I had yet to discover HG's wealth of knowledge and the monsters that narcissists truly are. That she's a horrible, self-absorbed, lying, history-revising narcissist. Is this James Corden, arsehole, being an entitled fucker? That he feels the need, perhaps, to issue the old, do you know who I am? Is he being confrontational because somebody's not giving him what he wants? Is he getting in somebody's face by virtue of looking to intimidate them for the purposes of the assertion of control? Now, a quick word about Michael Bublé. Twat. He is a narcissist as well. He was seen, if you remember, during lockdown, being thoroughly unpleasant to his wife on camera. So imagine what else goes on behind closed doors.
Would you say if there was like one sign of narcissism that most aptly is embodied by her, what might that be?
The emptiness. She's empty, vacuous. There's nothing.
But that's
there.
not okay. What do we really mean by empty? Because obviously, okay, I got the South Park thing, and I found it funny. So what, in that context, what does it mean for Meghan and you, being one yourself, to be empty? When you speak of Meghan in this way, I sense disdain, which is fair enough. But obviously, as we touched on before, you being admittedly a narcissist yourself, how do you sort of square that? And why the disdain for her and not like, oh, I recognize another one of me, you know?
Because she's an inferior type to me.
There we go. and inferior in what sense?
What about the proposition of suggesting that narcissists are needed to demonstrate to you as an empath that there are going to be people who are superior to you and you should understand that and deal with it?
Well, I don't believe anyone is either inferior or superior to me. I believe we're all just one doing our thing, and we all have the capacity to show up once we realize that.
HG cannot resist the urge to abuse people and tear other people down. Would you not think if someone was the most evolved narcissist, they would be able to fight that urge?
I have to cut people down. From my extensive discussions with Dr. O, I have come to realize that this is wrong, but I cannot help myself. The urge to destroy, denigrate, criticize, and belittle is overwhelming. I have to spoil. There is no hope for an alternative.
He talks about Meghan Markle's bad behavior because she causes trouble for the royal family and allegedly bullied staff, etc. But HG admits to worse behavior than that. We do not know how Meghan really treats Harry behind closed doors, but I doubt it is worse than the premeditated abuse HG dolls out to his partners.
Who've had the misery of life with a narcissist end up at your door. Indeed they do. Whose door do your victims end up at, I wonder? Can't be yours, can it? Well, no, because I've kicked them out, got rid of them, disengaged from them. Some have ended up at death's door, as those of you who've accessed more of my material know. Some, I know, have ended up in the arms, metaphorically speaking, of therapists and doctors. Often they turn to family and friends to try and fathom out what it is that has happened and where it all went wrong.
HG also seems to think he is the ultra, because he is also a psychopath. He is self-aware, and he claims he is the only one who can give the best knowledge about his kind. That is, however, debatable. HG is not the only self-aware narcissist online who teaches people about narcissism, and they do not all seem to agree with everything HG says. HG is also not the only self-aware narcissistic psychopath who teaches people about narcissism. Sam Vaknin, a self-aware narcissist and psychopath, has written many books about the subject. He has a YouTube channel, and most of the language about narcissism was invented by him.
When I started the whole thing in '95, there was nothing online. I maintained the first website and the first 6 support groups for victims, and that had lasted for 9 years. I was all alone for 9 years. There was absolutely no one else. But more importantly, I had to invent the entire language, or most of the language that is in use today, because there were no words. There were no words to describe what was happening. And in the absence of words, there's no consciousness. Words create consciousness. People were grappling in the dark, trying to convey and communicate why their experiences are idiosyncratic, why their experiences are unique. They're not like typical abuse. Something else is happening, and they lack the words. So I rummaged through psychoanalytic literature, and I picked up phrases like forced sale from Winnicott. I picked up narcissistic supply from Fennico, but I was still short. I was still short of many words. So I had to come up with my own words. So, for example, devalue and discard, or somatic narcissist, or cerebral narcissist, or narcissistic abuse itself, or hoovering, or flying monkeys, or narcissistic flea.
HG does not like the term narcissistic supply. He asks everybody to use the term fuel, because that is what he likes.
I'm trying to get into the habit of saying fuel rather than supply, because I know that you detest.
Thank you. Yes, I do. I detest the word supply. It's pointless.
Firstly,
interesting, because he has said a few times on his channel, he does not like it if people try to change language just because they find it offensive.
The publishers then have decided you can't use the word fat, you have to use enormous instead. That in Fantastic Mr. Fox, Bunce looks up at one of the other farmers, and because he's a pot-bellied dwarf, they have now expunged pot-bellied and dwarf because that's deemed to be offensive. And all you're left with is Bunce looked up. So it strips the book of its evocative descriptions. It's ridiculous. These individuals are exhibiting the sense of entitlement to tamper with somebody's original work, and it's outrageous.
HG makes the claim that it is always the fault of his partners that he devalues them, and it is not him at fault. Even though HG says in every single relationship he has ever been in it got to the devaluation stage, it is still always the other person's fault, and they deserved it.
Narcissists always shift blame. Indeed, Ophelia, you're entirely correct.
Now HG says many times that narcissists blame shift, so you would think that as a self-aware narcissist who constantly criticizes other narcissists, like Harry's wife, for blame shifting, he would not do it himself. Again, what makes him better and more evolved than the other narcissists he criticizes?
So you have a disdain for people with traits like me that are highly empathic.
Well,
because you see
I have
it
a
as
disdain.
weakness.
Yes, I see it as weakness. I understand you won't, but I do, because it leads to you being ensnared by my kind. And so that presents a problem for you. And so I see it as I see that as a weakness, the need to give that love, the need to behave in a particular way. I see as a weakness. I recognize, of course, that people will turn it around and say, but hang on, you need us for fuel. So isn't that an issue for you? Well, it is, but it doesn't become a problem for me because I'm always able to obtain it.
Do you, so you don't recognize feelings like sadness and loneliness?
No, I never feel sad. I don't cry. I vaguely recall doing so as a very young child, but then it effectively was beaten out of me. Big boys don't cry, HG. So I no longer did. And I haven't done for many, many, many years. Nothing causes me to, because I don't feel sorry for myself. There are narcissists that do. When they cry, they're not crying for you, they're crying for themselves, governed by the way that their narcissism is functioning. But I don't feel sadness. I don't feel happiness. I feel the effects of the fuel and the power that's associated with all of that. So again, when I see somebody who's mourning the loss of the relationship and crying their eyes out, they're empathic, that's a weakness. Where I see a mid-range narcissist crying his eyes out over the supposed loss of the relationship, that's just a manipulation to those around him. But again, I think that's pathetic. I have as much disdain as I do for members of my brethren as I do for empathic individuals. As I've explained to people, I don't have any prejudices. I hate everybody equally.
So you would say that you hate people?
I do, when they get in my way.
Yes.
If his partners all deserve to be devalued for, quote, threatening his control, then why does he not think all victims of narcissist abuse deserved it for threatening the control of their narcissist? HG has made the claim repeatedly that if you are in a relationship with a narcissist, the narcissist will always devalue you, and there is nothing you can ever do to stop it. If that is true, then how is it the victim's fault if there is nothing they could do? Also, what could they have possibly done that was so bad that they deserved abuse that left them psychologically damaged and may even have made some of them suicidal?
Whose door do your victims end up at, I wonder? Can't be yours, can it? Well, no. Some have ended up at death's door. As those of you who've accessed more of my material, no.
As I would not wish that on my worst enemy. These partners of HG must have been truly evil to deserve that. That is strange, since HG claims that he dates insnarls mostly empaths. Let's listen briefly to an example of a partner he had who he calls Sophie. Let's see if we can spot what she did that was so evil.
I bought through to the loving. I was just thinking how wonderful it is being with you. To the scathing, I was just wondering why on earth I am with such an empty-headed woman as you. That was all she wanted to know. What was I thinking? On and on she would go, asking, and no matter what I said, be it compliment or nasty comment or ephemera, she would smile and give a satisfied nod. All of this made her very attractive to someone like me at the outset, as she was a real high-volume fuel generator, but once that wore thin, it was rather difficult to denigrate her, so she would react the way that I wanted. She put me in mind of that toy, the Weeble, the catchphrase surrounding the Weeble was Weebles wobble, but they don't fall down. Sophie was like that. I would be horrible to her, and she maintained a smile, although I thought, or at least hoped, she was dying inside, and made an excuse and found a rationale for my unpleasantness. Insults just seemed to bounce off her. Smashing plates and ornaments caused her to stand and watch with a slightly perplexed look on her face before she tidied the pieces away. She did not cry or show feared. I would sit and flirt with other women online and comment to Sophie about how attractive they were. She would look over and agree with my comments and go on to compliment how white their teeth were or how she liked their hairstyle. If I wandered in during the middle of the morning, she would just ask how my night had.
Wow, she seemed truly evil, didn't she? Being nice all of the time, and the only mistake she made was not getting away from this horrible abuser.
I would be horrible to her, and she maintained a smile, although I thought, or at least hoped, she was dying inside.
Basically, HG Tudor gets into relationships with people, taking up valuable time out of their life, where they could find someone who truly loves them and they could build a happy life together. When HG gets bored, instead of ending the relationship, he decides to subject them to abuse that could leave them psychologically damaged forever, or even make them suicidal.
Whose door do your victims end up at, I wonder? Can't be yours, can it? Well, no. Some have ended up at death's door.
Then tells people online about it and gets praised for it. So again, empaths. Any empathy? In fact, you do not have to be really high in empathic traits to feel sorry for victims of abuse. A normal person's reaction is to feel sorry for abuse victims and want the abuser locked away. HG Tudor's material and advice to victims may be helpful, but if you escaped an abusive relationship, the credit goes to you. No one could have saved you. If you got away from your abuser and got on with your life, the credit goes to you, not HG. If he wants to stop abuse, he could just stop abusing people.
To make you my puppet, I engage on a two-pronged approach. Firstly, I make you utterly dependent on me. I open the doors and let you look upon heaven. That way you are in awe of what I can give you, and you want it. Oh, you really, really want it. Secondly, I will then remove every method of support, both real and potential, that you might rely on to try and recover your free will. Family, friends, colleagues, and so on, I will be posting about how I do this through my slur campaign in a separate post, so that you have nobody to turn to. Thus, as you look on heaven entranced and enraptured, I am opening the trapdoor to hell right under your feet.